Alright, welcome back to another video. So I'm doing a couple projects on my F150 currently, but the topic of this video is going to be changing your front bumper. So the reason I'm changing my front bumper is I'm going to be doing an upgrade. So this truck started out life as an XL work truck, obviously. So it had the black front end on it. If you watch my other videos so far, you've seen I took off stock grill and then I replaced it with this Raptor style grill. And I don't really want my truck to look like a Raptor. I just really like that grill style. So what I'm going to be doing is upgrading to OEM Ford bumper that has the fog lights in it, and I'm going to paint it white to match the rest of the truck. So I could have just painted this bumper, but it doesn't have the fog light holes, and I don't like the look of it. I figured now's the time to do it. I'm going to show you how to add fog lights and change the bumper on your 2015 up F150. Now it will be identical to my procedure for a 2015 to 17, and then once we go up from 2017 to 2019 or 20, things are a little bit different just because of the shape of the bumper, but all the parts are basically the same. All right, so to get the bumper off, you have to remove this plastic in the middle here, and the best tool that you can have to do something like that would be a trim removal tool, something like this, or a cat claw like this, because we're going to carefully pry this stuff out. It's just all clipped in. You do need to remove the grill, and I already have that out because I was moving ahead a little bit. The only thing that holds the grill in are a series of clips like this, these little plastic clips that you pry apart and then pull them out. There are 4 bolts. Once you get the top part off, there are 4 bolts that hold the grill on there. And then down the side, we have 2 8mm bolts that are bolted in to the sides of the grill. You want to be sure to unplug the 2 electric connections on the top, and then there's just these little push tabs that hold this rubber flap to the grill, and then the grill will lift up and out of the way. The reason I got rid of or moved the grill out of the way is because I needed to get under here. If you look in here, you'll see there's a wiring harness. So this wiring harness runs from, if you have a 2.7 or a 3.5 liter, there's basically your turbo blow-off valve, whatever you want to call it, the factory calls it, I don't know. It's on the intercooler, and that control wire runs over to here. You can see that's pretty much it on my truck. Then it runs up behind the head, or next to the headlight here. This is that wiring harness, and it plugs in here. So obviously in my case, I've only got a few wires that were used. Well, we needed to remove this harness and add the upgrade harness to add the fog lights. So the truck is pre-wired to this point for fog lights, but this harness is different without fog lights. So here is the part number right here I just picked up. And this is kind of going to be more than what I need, but it is the part number that we will use, because you can see it retains our plug for our turbo control, but what it does add is our harness. As you can see, our plugs for our fog lights right here. So in addition to buying fog lights, which I would recommend you buy aftermarket, not Ford, just because it's so much cheaper, you can get the whole setup for under $50 for the fog lights and the housings. We'll need this wiring harness. And then the other part you need is, try to get a part number here for you, right here. SW7421 is your motorcraft part number, or FL3Z11654BA. So I open the box to show you what we have going on in here. Alright, so this is our new headlight switch. So basically, see it just adds the fog light button on the truck. Currently there's just one button right here, so this splits it up, adds a fog light button in addition to the you know, the bed lights. So basically it's a really simple job as far as the wiring goes. So here's that factory switch. Like I told you, this is how easy this is. You really literally just grab this and pull. Okay, now you can see the back of the switch. So we're gonna unplug the switch like that. And then what is holding it in here is some plastic clips. Now, when you unplug the switch, it's important to note that my headlights just turned on, okay? So you kind of want to work fast at this or disconnect the battery before you do this. You see we have these plastic clips on both sides. If I push them down, try not to throw it all over the place. That's all there is to get the old switch out. So take your new switch, make sure it's oriented the correct way. All right, we'll just plug it back in. And my headlights turn off. And you can test your headlights to make sure everything works like it's supposed to. All right, you can see, I'm just gonna slowly work my way across the front here. All right, so we've pulled all this off. These metal clips will have to come out. To get them out, you just compress them and pull them out. Then we'll transfer the clips onto the plastic here in a minute. All right, so to get the bumper off, we've got a nut here and a nut here. And if we look in here, you can see there's a bolt, but how you get that is we go around from underneath, there'll be a bolt to remove from behind, and that's the same thing for both sides. So go ahead and zip those off, and then that is the only thing holding your bumper in place. Obviously, once we make sure we have nothing else connected. All right, so before I take the bumper off, I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this wiring harness. Like I said, let's take my cat claw, kind of pop these tabs here. Right here, there's another connector that plugs in. So have to remove that. Okay, and then there's a connector here that's, like I said, where it goes down to the wastegate. So that's loose. So there's another connector right here, holding it to the headlight frame. That should be it. So there is that wiring harness that's removed. Now, I also had another problem with my truck with my wastegate actuator. It's actually called the electronic compressor bypass valve in the Ford world. That's what that device on the intercooler is called. But there's actually a break in the wire in this harness, so this just happens to be a perfect time that I was switching this out. And the code I was getting was P0035. So I probably should make another video just on that, but yeah, it's good that I'm replacing that. I'm gonna go ahead, since this doesn't directly connect to the bumper, I'm gonna go ahead and install this new wiring harness. Plug in this spot here. Again, plug in right over here. And then our last one, obviously, will run down to our fog lights. But again, we're just going to kind of leave it hanging here for now, out of the way of the bumper. Alright, so I've got my OEM Ford bumper, and it comes in a black primered color when you get it. I don't really recommend using aftermarket, like cheap bumpers you find like on eBay or whatever. They're usually, the metal is thinner and it will rust much quicker. It doesn't have as good of an E-coating. If you get a Kappa certified bumper, it's usually going to be a little bit better, but it's actually not that much more expensive, especially if you have a relationship with your Ford dealer, just to go run down and get a actual genuine OEM Ford bumper. I'm using this 2K epoxy primer first before I apply my color. And this one's from Napa. The Spray Max, it's basically the same thing as the Spray Max 2K epoxy primer. It's just what I was able to grab locally here at my Napa. It's pretty expensive, but this is going to be the best foundation for paint, especially on a bumper. It's going to, you know, get hit with rocks and bug debris all the time. You want to make sure you're using high quality products, high quality paint. So this epoxy primer is going to be the best. So, all right, so after the primer dried for about 24 hours, and I'm going to be spraying the color. This is urethane base coat. All right, so I'll let that dry about an hour or two, and then it's time for the clear coat. All right, so now it's time for the clear coat. You definitely want to wear a respirator when you're using the Spray Max. All right, so I've got my new bumper laid out here, the painted one, and the old bumper right here. And I have to transfer all of the brackets from the old bumper to the new bumper and all the plastic parts. So everything's a direct swap. You can see there's just like reinforcement brackets, the actual bumper brackets themselves. There's the plastic on the bottom and the plastic on the top. The only difference is the fog light holes, obviously. Then you need some U-bolts to mount the fog lights. So I'll show you on the old bumper. It's easier to see. The fog lights mount to these extra holes here. Put a U-bolt over the hole and then run a bolt down through it. So that's something you can pick up at a hardware store if you don't want to spend the money on the Ford ones. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all transferred over. And then the bumper will actually be ready to go back on the truck. All right, so after getting everything put back together, went ahead and set the bumper on. So it's just the reverse removal. You want to get your bolts started. There's a couple brackets you'll see when you removed it that have the bolts attached to it that come through from behind. So you just hold that up in place and start your nuts. And then don't forget the one on the back. It's probably a good idea to have two people. Somebody just to hold it level while you tighten it up. Obviously I have an impact that made it a lot quicker. I could just zip it tight real quick and was able to do it by myself. So now I'm just going to go ahead and put the grill back in, and then the last piece will be that plastic surround in there. But we've got our fog lights installed, and I'll show you how we get those working here. Now that we've got our switch, our wiring harness connected, and our fog lights connected, everything is connected. Headlights need to be in the on position, and then when you press the fog light button, it will work. As you can see, we now have OEM fog lights installed. You can always replace these bulbs with LED. All right, so I'm here in the truck, and this step is optional. If you don't have the equipment to do this, your fog lights do work once you plug everything in and put your new switch in. Additionally though, I have the 8-inch screen upgrade in my truck, and I noticed when I turn on the fog lights, there's nothing on the display that shows that the fog lights are on, and there's supposed to be a little icon. So using ForScan, I went in, connected to the vehicle, and I went and connected to the module configuration, and I went to the IPC, which is the instrument panel configuration, and there is an option in here for front fog lamps, and it's set to disabled. So if I enable that, and then I write my changes, all right. So now let me try it again. I'll go ahead and switch on my headlights. Gotta make sure the key is in the on position. If I click the fog light button, you can see that now I have a indicator on the display that shows that the fog lights are on, which is how it's supposed to be. So again, that's optional. Obviously, if your truck has a lesser display like the 2-inch or the 4-inch, it may have to be enabled on that also. But if you don't feel comfortable using 4Scanner, you don't want to do the equipment, the fog lights will still work. So just wanted to make that clear.